You're now listening to a Rat House production podcast. For more podcasts like this, head to retthaus.net. Hey, you guys. Welcome to Comics After Dark, the real comic book fan. I am one of your hosts, MTR, also known as Matt the Rat. And we have a very special guest for you guys today. We have the co-creator of TMNT, Kevin Eastman. How are you doing today, good sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
Man, I listened to at least 5 hours of interviews to prepare for this. I'm not going to lie to you.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry.
No, it was fun. It was great. I gained so much knowledge, some stuff that I did know, some stuff that I didn't know. You and Peter Laird created the Turtles a long time ago as kind of a joke of what would be a really cool Bruce Lee character, and you decided to draw a turtle, and that's where the Turtles were born, the idea of it. And that was in Mirage Studios, which actually I'd like to thank you, because my production company is called Rat House Productions, and it's because my nickname is Matt the Rat, and I used to do it out of my house. So I spiffed it up and wrote RATT space HAUS Rat House Productions. So that was actually a little homage to Mirage, because I was like, man, like, how can I sound professional? And I slightly stole an original idea for you guys. So you guys will infamously be known for the idea behind Rat House.
Awesome. Well, it's funny, those things happen just exactly how they're supposed to happen. I mean, we called Mirage Studios because it actually was a mirage. It was just our living room. And so.
Yeah, and it was great. You guys, I believe you drilled some desktops like into a sofa essentially, and kind of went to town and started drawing, which is very interesting. And now we're over 30 years with TMNT. So much to do. I'm really excited, especially since I'm having a little boy, and I already have so much TMNT stuff. It's one of the few franchises I'm really okay with, like anything and everything. If you guys had TMNT shoes, I'd buy them. Like, it wouldn't bother me a bit. I love it so much.
Well, congratulations, by the way. That's awesome. And yeah, you have a lot of fun. Courtney and I have a son. Shane is going to be 11 this year, and it's a whole lot of fun. He's awesome.
Now, let's go ahead. Let's dive back into the comics. I really did hear a lot about how the Turtles were born, but I really didn't hear much about how the enemies of the Turtles were born, the Shredders and everything else. How did you go about that?
Well, the Shredder's a kind of a funny story, and actually, Shredder evolved out of Peter and I doing dishes. In that, Pete's wife Janine is a wonderful cook, and she would cook dinner, and then Pete would wash, and I'd usually dry. And one night I was drying one of those metal cheese graters, those kind of triangular things with a little handle on the end.
Oh yeah.
I was just kind of put my hand up inside it to dry it, and so it had all the little shredder things, the little graters on one side. And I'm like, wow, could you imagine a superhero? I mean, a bad guy with this as a weapon? He'd be like a grater. He would like grate people's skin off, and we could call him Grater. And Peter said, well, how about Shredder? So Shredder was born out of that. And then a lot of the other, like Bebop and Rocksteady and a lot of the other bad guy characters, if you will, came out of the development of the first role-playing game with Palladium Books. We did, we had to come up with, just as many bad guys as good guys, and, alliances and people they could fight. So, so we sort of, anything we could mutate, we mutated, and that's where the seed of all those things came from. And, as things went on, they evolve and change and stuff. So, yeah.
It's so great to hear stories like this, because it almost sounds like, when you're with your good friend and you're just having a few beers and you're like, what would be a really good idea? And you eventually drive down that route. It's so awesome to hear about that. So Turtles were created. You guys had a really good, really huge run, but eventually you and Peter got really busy, had to continue on with cartoon shows and stuff like that. So the comic book actually got passed on to other artists and other people to work on it for every other issue, so you guys could continue to release stuff. How was that relationship between AC Farley and everybody else that you guys pulled on?
Well, that was what was so fun about that. I mean, if you think about it, when we were growing up, the kind of comics I was reading, you'd have different art teams, different writers come in, and different artists, and some you like, more than others. But so it wasn't unfamiliar as an idea that, that other people would do fill-in issues for us. But all the guys, Mike Dooney, Jim Lawson, Ryan Brown, AC Farley, of course, Eric Talbot, all of those guys, we were fans of their artwork to begin with. We were fans of their comic. Mike Dooney had Gizmo and Jim Lawson. So when the Turtles started evolving and Peter and I started spending more time on the creative, whether it be the cartoon show or the movies, we kind of reached out and said, hey, do you have an interesting turtle story you'd like to tell? And so they would bring us the idea, and then we'd kind of rubber stamp it, and they would do their version of what they thought a cool turtle story would be. So we really embraced them to be creative, to not take the characters too far to the left or the right, keep the same heart and soul, but just really have fun and tell a fun story. We always said, write the kind of comic that you'd like to read, and they did, and those guys were fantastic.
Now, speaking of comics that were interesting and like to read, eventually TMNT actually made it to the Image universe with editor Eric Larson on it and a whole new crew, and Turtles were put through the ringer, man, like right off the bat. Raph's face gets half blown off practically. Donnie ends up kind of like not mutating, but conjoining with some cyborg technology. I mean, that was an interesting run that I think lasted about 12 issues, and that was it. How was the deal when that was presented to Image Comics?
Well, it was an interesting opportunity because Eric, a huge fan of Savage Dragon. We did a couple Savage Dragon Turtle crossovers.
Yes, you did.
I think it's issue 2 and issue 22. I think. I'd love to do another one someday. In Mirage, as a publisher, we were getting away from that. I think we did Turtles Volume 2. But anyway, Gary Carlson and Frank Fosco came up with an idea for a series that was intended to run 26. It did. But I really love the series. I love that they did it in black and white. I thought Gary's stories were wonderful and powerful. Frank's art was fantastic. Of course, Eric Larson did all the covers. And that's something that's been on IDW's radar that I know that they're really interested in republishing it and completing the series. So hopefully maybe in 2018 we'll have some good news for the fans that we can not only get it colorized and
that's exactly what I was gonna ask. I'm not gonna lie, if it was gonna come back in color or not.
Yeah. It's I love the black and white dearly. That's our roots and the beginnings. But color just can bring so much more to a story, and this is one I think that deserves to be colored and get back out there. So fingers and toes crossed. 2018, hopefully you'll see the Image series return and be completed.
Is there anybody in particular that you would really like to color all the Image stuff?
Well, I'm partial because I met this young guy. His name is Tomi, T-O-M-I, Tomi Varga. And he's a Cubic School graduate, submitted some samples to IDW around the time I was looking for a colorist and for a project. And I use him exclusively on all my covers. And we did a colorized version of Fistful of Blood. And he's fantastic. He's my guy. So I'm going to stay with Tomi as long as he can stay with me. So
that's awesome. So let's go ahead. Let's jump into the film franchise. I heard from you directly that somewhere in the world there is a director's cut of the original TMNT movie.
Yes, and actually it's something I think the fans would really enjoy. Something I'd dearly like to see is Steve Barron, who I love all the different cartoons and the different movies that have been done over the years with the Turtles. Turtles Forever, one of my favorites. But the first movie that Steve Barron directed and Jim Henson did the costumes for will always be my favorite. Not only because it was the first one, but it was really captured the essence of everything that we loved about the black and white series and the cool elements of the animated series. Something kind of right in the middle. But Steve did have a director's cut with I think an additional 20, maybe even 30 minutes of footage. And I still keep in touch with Steve, and it's something we sort of dream about as like, man, it would be great to release that. We're coming up. I mean, what was it? March the 20th of March was March 27th was I think the official anniversary of the release of the first movie. And so, yeah, it's something the fans would dig. I would dig, and hopefully, we'll see the light of day one day soon.
What's actually stopping that from happening?
Well, it's Hollywood's an interesting place. I'll say it politely. Sometimes that getting even kind of simple ideas move down the line. There's a lot of moving parts in some of these big companies. To make something like that happen, it really takes someone to champion it within the company and push it forward. So, we haven't given up hope. And there's been a bunch of conversations, but nothing concrete yet. So
obviously the first movie really did have great memories in your mind from being on set. I'm actually curious what are some of the funniest memories or some of the stuff you guys did while you visited on set?
Well, probably the funniest one was, I did a, stop.
Hello, you're on Comics After.
I can take this call now. Probably the funniest one was actually I had a cameo in the first Turtle movie. But it's like one of those kind of cameos where like you'd say like, hey, I was a stormtrooper in Star Wars. No, there was a scene that was set up where
you're part of the Foot Clan.
Garbage truck is brought in. The shredder finally gets squished on. But there was a scene where this garbage truck sort of comes around the corner in between like two turtles exchanging dialogue and fighting, and then Leonardo fighting like 11-foot soldiers behind them, and then down the street, like a half a block away, this truck pulls out, and this garbage man, Ernie the garbage man, comes walking out carrying 2 garbage bags, sees what's happening down the street, drops the bags, and then runs back down the street. Well, that was me. And so I told everybody I've got a cameo in the movie. Look for me. And when you saw it on screen, there's this little tiny black blob that comes out of the alley and goes right back to
You're just like, I was there. Those people that are in the back of the coffee shop, and you're like, that's my role. I was one of those guys drinking coffee. That was you.
Totally. But it was, what was so fun about visiting the set was, just seeing, firsthand, like, when they recreated the Second Time Around shop from the original comic books, and they brought it to life as one of the sets, and the sewer layer and those things. That was just, it's one thing to draw it, whether it be a cartoon or a comic book, but to actually be physically standing in a space where you're standing in the sewer where the turtles live was pretty awesome. It was quite an experience. And
seeing some of the behind the scenes footage, those sets were kind of intense, man. They were huge. They were very intricate. Having the smoke coming from the sewers and everything. It was very, very interesting. I am actually, I wouldn't say good friends, but I am familiar acquaintances with Tom Waltz, and I know how crazy that man could be. I have to flash him the Illuminati sign every single time I see him, just to mess with him a little bit. Some people that know Tom will understand that reference. How is the working relationship between you two? Because at this point, I mean, it's been years. You guys, I believe, are at issue 68 now. I could be wrong. I swear I read it. Yeah, 68.
Yeah, 68 just came out. I'll say this is that Tom Waltz is not only the coolest guy I ever met. He's such a great writer. I joke mostly sincerely. I want to be Tom Waltz when I grow up. But I dearly love Tom's whole concept. When IDW invited me down to when they attained the license to do the Turtles comic books, I went down and Tom pitched. They wanted me involved, and Tom pitched me his idea, and I just fell in love with his insight in that he sort of picked his favorite things out of
everything,
kind of black and white comic books, everything, and he sort of created this new foundation to tell stories, and things like the reincarnation angle, that was all Tom. One of the turtles being separated when they were first exposed to the ooze, that was also Tom's idea. I mean, he really put together this wonderful idea, I am so impressed with everything he does. There's so many, great artists that bring those stories to life. But Tom's a genius and a good friend.
Yeah, and Tom, speaking to Tom, he's a madman. He plans out so well for this, and according to Tom, he's actually already planned till issue 150. And I remember interviewing him over 4 years ago, and he was already planned to 100. What happens when you get these phone calls of like, look, this is the direction we're gonna drive in? Perfect example would be bringing in, technically, I guess, Cyborg Donnie and turning him into Metalhead and putting a nice twist from the Image run over to the IDW. Oh, what do you say when you hear these, I would say, far-fetched ideas, I guess?
Well, it's that's what's so much fun. And actually, we got to give a shout out to Bobby Curnow, who's the series editor, who is also a very talented writer, and he brings so much to the stories. We do what we call these. It's called a mind melt. About every 2 to 3 weeks, we all get together and we have a roadmap that Tom and Bobby have designed, and we continue to shape it, because it's still, because even you can say, this is where we want issue 50 to be, this is where we want issue 100 to be. The path getting there is a bit organic, and you can really have the opportunity to grab onto a good idea or something you hadn't thought of before, or something you can bring into the story that makes the story stronger. The best part is I feel like, much like, the series tonally is the closest thing to what Peter and I originally did. It's got a lot of edge to it. It's got some great drama to it, and a bit of comedy, of course. But it's stories that are written. I feel like we're lucky to have the fans that we have, but we write these stories for us. We write the stories. Tom especially writes the stories that are the kind of comics that he'd like to read. And even in another shout out to Nickelodeon. Everything that we do on the IDW Turtles series, Turtles universe, everything goes through Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon really supports, and Joan Van Hilty is the main editor there, and she also brings in great ideas. So it's I'd say Tom's in the driver's seat, Bobby's in the passenger seat. I guess me and Nickelodeon are sort of in the back seat, cheerleading, like yay. But no. Every idea that's put on the table that's good is wrapped into the series, and is so it's a great team.
Speaking of Nickelodeon, has there been a time yet with this ongoing comic with IDW? Has there been a time of them telling you, no, you can't do this? Like, we do not approve of this.
No, that's the thing. It's like it's not so much that they would say, no, because I think that say like extreme violence or stuff that we kind of already stay away from, if you will. It's like we push the limits, but they're, we don't have to make them uncomfortable. It's like, you don't need somebody's, head, to actually show physically someone's head being cut off and it's spinning through the air or whatever. You don't need that to tell a good story. So.
Or Casey being used as bait at one point with Shredder. That was an awesome scene. So
even like like the whole Donatello thing with like you mentioned earlier, the switch when he was conscious Metalhead. That was such a great idea that Tom came up with and Nickelodeon embraced, and we were a bit surprised by the reaction from the fans, because
broke the internet. Like no one was expecting it, not one person.
Yeah, but it was good, and that's to me it tells us two things. One is that it was a wonderfully written story, and that we have characters that people seriously love, and the fact that we take them to that place and worry them, it says a lot for our fans, and they will really embrace the series, and of course would never kill one of our kids.
Oh, but it was a genius idea to just kind of drive us off that route to bring them right back. It was amazing. Out of sheer curiosity, since you guys do have a nice little roadmap, what can we expect on the road to issue 100?
Well, there's some it's hard, and I have to watch myself. We just did even when I go to conventions and engage with fans and that kind of thing, because even for example, like issue 68 just came out, but we've Tom has already written up to issue 73, so it's sort of like we're already 6 months down the road, and so I have to be careful, like and when this happens, and they go, what happens, and I'm thinking like, no spoiler alerts, but no, there's some really great stuff. We're just heading into a series called The Trial of Krang, where the turtles go and Krang's put on trial for his crimes.
Yes.
And this, without I probably should shut up. I'm so tempted to give more away, but one of the things we did announce at WonderCon this past weekend is there's this group of a society of these evil characters, these called the Pantheon, and we just revealed a character named Jaguar, which was pulled from the original Archie series as a male character. We turned it into a sort of a Wonder Woman female character. And so we just let that out as news this past weekend, and a few other surprises. So stay tuned. there's some fun stuff coming. Seriously fun stuff.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's get into some questions from some of the fans. Nathan Young says, how do you feel about the changes between the original Turtles where they were and what they've done to them on TV now?
Well, I really adore the new Nickelodeon series, especially. It's like Ciro Neely is one of the main executive producers, and it takes such an amazing team of writers, Brandon Allman, and producers to bring that series to life. But Ciro sort of has been pointing it since the beginning, and I adore it. I think it's funny, it's sharp, it's dark, and Ciro took kind of the approach I think that Tom did in that. The same thing that Tom did is like sort of picking his favorite parts of different Turtle universes and creating a new platform to not only reintroduce characters like Renette and Rat King and other ones, but also bring in new characters, which I love. But no, I think the series is fantastic. It's almost sad. I know this final season is Tales of the Turtles, season 5. But I'm sad to see this one pass, but I'm excited also for the new series that Nickelodeon is going to be doing, more of a traditional animated series for 2018. But yeah, it's to me, it's the closest thing to if you look at the original 80s cartoon, it was fun, it was light, it was silly, and that's where, the world was introduced to the Turtles. I think this really beautifully takes it to the next level and tells some really great stories.
Travis Fidlar actually wants to know, when are we going to see the 5th turtle again? And I believe he's talking about Venus.
I don't know. It's one of those things that as I love. When the 5th turtle was originally developed, it was going to be a male turtle. It was developed for a 4th live action movie with New Line Cinema that never came to be. And when we started developing the live action series with Saban and Fox Kids, we changed it to a female turtle. And there's such mixed reviews. I love those stories. I like that female character, but a lot of fans didn't. Whether we'll see a story with a 5th turtle in it is a big question mark. I think I'm sure Tom will somehow, some way fit Venus into the IDW universe. If it can be done, Tom's the guy to do it for sure.
Most definitely. Turtles Be Life says, "Are you proud of what TMNT has become?"
Very proud. It's one of those things that something that started out of Peter Laird and myself both got into this for our love of comic books, our dream of being Jack Kirby, if you will, to tell comic stories, and the fact that we were able to do that, accomplish that that's to me, it just couldn't have gotten any better than being able to pay your rent and draw comic books for a living. And the fact that it's continued on not only to the first generation, of fans that found it in the late 80s, early 90s, but here we are, 34 years later, and it's finding a whole new audience of young kids, and that to me is even more mind blowing. So it's humbling. It's feel unworthy. It's exciting, but we couldn't have done any of it without such awesome fans who have supported it since the beginning, and even through the good movies, the bad movies, the good TV shows, the bad TV shows. They've been there for us throughout, and that's respect, man. I love it.
Little Gryffindor says, the franchise has been going on for years and has been in different reincarnations. Do you keep planning on going with new reincarnations and extras? So in a way, the franchise will, quote unquote, never die.
Well, that's, it just still comes, even that still comes down to the fans and what the fans, if they, like when we worked on the IDW comic series, the fans could have just as easily hated the series as opposed to loving it and following it. So as long as we can, make great stories, great comics, great, cartoon shows, and the fans will stick with us, we'll keep doing them. So, it's really it's more up to them than us. But I'm grateful for the job I have. So.
Gracie Candy asks, when will someone other than Leo be the big hero at the end?
That's one of the things that that's a good question too. But it's tough that to put one above the other, because the Turtles since the beginning have always sort of filled those specific roles of Leo being sort of the leader type, but it takes in almost every story, every successful story, I think it takes all 4 of them to work together to accomplish their mission or accomplish their task or look out for each other. But I think each turtle, if you look at some of the different cartoon episodes and some of the comic series, each turtle has their moment in the spotlight, if you will. But there still has to be a structure there, whether it be X-Men or Avengers or Fantastic Four. The turtles sort of fit that same scenario. You got to have a leader, and you got to have the whole team to make the whole thing work.
It's been over 30 years of having your hand in TMNT. I'm actually kind of curious, now that you do touch hands with IDW and go ahead and get into writing it, how do you get into that state of mind to write the Turtles?
Well, it's easy in that it's like riding a bicycle, for lack of a better example. It's just sort of, they've been, as much as the Turtles have been part of the fans' life, the fans that read them, part of their life. It's been a critical part of my life, and I can't remember a day that I didn't have some interaction or have something to do with turtles in it for 34 years. So I think I wrote one of the episodes coming up this year for the cartoon show, and I write some of the stuff for IDW, although Tom does most of the writing. It's easy to sort of get into that space. The comic series for an older audience, so you can have a bit more edge to it. The cartoons for a younger audience, so you sort of adapt into it. So it's almost thoughtless. I don't want to say thoughtless that it's not hard, but it's like you just sort of easily slip into it, and it feels like home.
Obviously you've been heavily involved with TMNT, especially nowadays. It seems like most of your schedule actually goes to the IDW run and making sure everything's running smoothly. Is there any other projects that you have your hand in by chance?
Yeah, it's I love that we've got the ongoing Turtle series, and now Turtle Universe is heading into it's heading close to its second year. But I've got two other projects. Another project I'm working on right now called Los Angeles. It's LOST, Los Angeles. I've been working on that for about a year. Hopefully that'll see the light of day, maybe the end of this year. And then I've got a kids property called Underwear that I'm re-releasing as a digital series, and I've got a few other things, but it's a matter of finding time amongst all things turtles, which take up most of the time, which I'm not complaining. But yeah, hopefully in the next year or so, you start seeing more other creator-owned properties that I've been working on coming out through IDW.
Usually when something turtle comes out, there's a slight backlash, and then everybody shuts up. And that's what seems to be the reoccurring role of turtles, and it quite possibly will last till the end of time. Why do you think the turtles seem so timeless?
Well, I think it's, we're very lucky. I think people find something in them that they like, but I think, it's the adoptive family, and that, they're kind of all misfits, that they're all brothers. They sort of made up their own family unit with, they have a mutant rat as a dad. They love each other. They look out for each other. And I think that, because they're a mutant, if you will, they're not one specific race, creed, or color, or, it alienates nobody. Anybody can sort of, if you're male, female, or you can identify, I'm kind of like Donnie because I like technical things. I'm kind of like Michelangelo because I'm the kind of the funny one of the bunch. So I think they're relatable, and that we're all sort of looking for, a hero, and the turtles, they want to be teenagers first, and at the same time they want to also stand up and do the right thing when the chips are down and people count on them. So, and I think everybody really wants to be that. So I think they're just relatable on a level, on a multiple levels.
Last but not least, Kevin, where can we find you on the internet?
If you go to KevinEastmanStudios.com, we have a fan section, we have a fan site. That's all things Kevin Eastman, all things Turtles. We give you the latest news, the latest updates. There's behind the scenes stuff that only fans can see. Let you know where we're going to be for shows. Just different kind of events, and all things Turtles kind of converges there. So yeah, KevinEastmanStudios.com is all things me and Turtles.
All right, you guys, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Comics After Dark. I'm your host, MTR, also known as Matt the Rat. Keep on comic coming, guys. Go later.